In this session, we will talk about the Datetime module. The Python provides us with several built-in modules to use to handle the dates and times, and datetime is one of them. In the next session, we'll learn about the time module. The datetime module itself has inside it four commonly used classes: the date class, time class, datetime class, time delta class. It is sometimes confusing that you have a module named datetime, and inside it you have a module named datetime. So this is sometimes create a mistake, like you import datetime and you are dealing with the class, but you still need to import the class from inside it. So be careful when the module name is same as a class name. It typically creates confusions. Here are the couple of date and time classes. You need to import the datetime and observe we have here datetime.time and datetime.date. You can write something like datetime.time and 14 and 7. This would represent the hour 14 and 7. 14 is definitely the 2 p.m. hour. You can get this object and start to question it, some of the variables inside it, like datetime.hour, .minute, .second, .microsecond. You can print the type definitely. You can make a bigger time, like maybe 14:7 for 2 p.m. and 59 seconds and 300 milliseconds, and so on. On the other side, you can also use the datetime class to get a date. So the date can bring for you, for example, the date today, which is going to get the today date. You can use the ctime to get a different format for it. You can again access the datetime object to get the year, the month, or day. So as you see, the datetime class has a date class and has a time class. So these two components are inside it. In a similar way, you can even have a datetime class itself, which is now the combination of the date and the time itself. If you would like to make some replacements to some elements, you have to do it by creating a new one, because the datetime class is immutable. So you have to do some replacement. You do it like dot replace year was equal this year, day, second, and then you get a new date with that. This is now the third class. The fourth common class is a time delta class, and this is mainly if you would like to subtract two dates from each other. For example, we have here this date, and we subtract them and get a delta date. If you print the type, you will notice the delta. If you print the delta, you will notice you have the total number of days. You can get the seconds, or the total number of seconds, which represent the total number of days and minutes and hours and so on, all of them converted to single seconds. This is mainly the four classes. I would like to move to a little off topic about that. Let's say you have a function here, and the function is passed a default argument with datetime.now. Now, I gave you before a question in one of the quizzes to administrate the problem here, but I wanted to make it more explicit. What do you think is the problem here? The problem is, if you try to iterate 10 times, for example, and keep calling this hello function, you will notice that the datetime, all of them has the same date and time component. But you probably expected that with every call we are getting the new datetime.now. But this doesn't happen in Python. In Python, the default arguments are used with the first call only, like once like with the definition, sorry. Once it is defined, it takes a value. So regardless all of the consecutive calls, all of them will have the very old original value. If you are coming from a language like C++, this is going to be very weird for you, because in C++ with every call, the default value is going to be a new one. But this isn't the case in Python. So how to handle that? What if I would like to provide a date as a default value? The right way is to use something like none. Use none and check it here, and then assign the value here. This way, with every call, you are actually computing a new datetime value. This is very similar, by the way, to what we the quiz question. It was about the list that has an empty list here. Let's say you have a hello function that has a default function of list, and it keeps appending one. Observe here, if you try to call it 3 times, the list with every time will have one more element. Why? Because the first list is going to be assigned to the list and will be kept in memory this way. So with every call, you are referring to the very old list object. That's why you shouldn't at all assign a default value from a mutable object. and you shouldn't try to assign a value from something that could vary. Things like integers, floats, strings are okay, this kind of immutable data structures, but be careful here because you are actually calling a function that is returning a date, and you are thinking that with every call you are calling the function again, but this doesn't happen. Before ending that, I would like to tell you something, and this slide will appear again for you in the OOB section, but let's assign it here for now. It might seem for you that the date and time class are very basic and naive classes. However, in industry, they are a big source of pain and bugs. So you have to read a lot about what are these problems, and you have to read a lot about the best practices in using them. I'm putting here a lot of links. I would like you to read all of these links to have some initial background, like what is the problem of the year 2038, what is the problem of year 2000, what is a leap second. When it comes to the daylight savings time, you know, in these countries where the time might change in the summer and then change back in the winter, we do that to do some savings for the energy. And sometimes this daylight saving change for political reasons. I remember in Egypt there was once a rule to change it from the political perspective. So time zones and daylight saving times be a big hassle for people in industry. That's why these are kind of classes that you have to be very careful about them. You have to educate yourself about them and what kind of best practices to deal with them, especially when it comes to time zones and daylight savings. See you next time talking about time module.